The year was 1867, and winter came with fangs. Snow had begun to fall in early October, weeks before it should have. Now it lay heavy across the land, dragging down pine limbs and cloaking the ranges in silence. Wind howled down from the mountains like a banshee let loose, and in its teeth was a cold that bit through hides, bone, and memory alike. Josie Maddox lay curled beneath a threadbare quilt inside a collapsed-line shack that leaned like a drunk toward the north ridge. Her breath steamed in the air, slow and shallow. Hunger did that, made a body quiet, deliberate, like if you moved too fast you'd burn what little fuel you had left. She'd taken to wrapping her legs in horse blankets and sleeping with her hands beneath her arms just to keep the frostbite from claiming more fingers. Two were already black at the tips. She hadn't told anyone. Not that there was anyone left to tell. Her right leg, the one shattered clear through at the knee last spring, throbbed like a second heart. It had never set right after the accident. Wagon wheel buckled on a muddy slope, crushed her leg between the axle and a rock the size of a tree stump. There was no doctor on the trail, only whiskey and grit and a biting stick. The bone healed crooked. She could stand if she braced on something, but walking meant dragging the limb like a sack of grain. Riding was out of the question. Running? A dream long since buried. Josie had once been a firebrand. Ranch-born, saddle-raised, quicker with a lasso than half the cowhands out of Fort Bridger. Folks used to call her Mad Maddox, part out of admiration, part out of fear. She'd taken pride in it once. That was before the accident. Before her fiancé, Luke Harmon, rode off with promises in his mouth and didn't come back with spring. Before the land turned against her. She chewed on a strip of old leather torn from the inside of her saddlebag. Not for food, but to keep her jaw moving, to feel something. The pain in her belly was a dull roar now, constant, rhythmic, like waves crashing somewhere far off. Outside, the wolves were howling again. The bastards had caught her scent days ago. She'd seen their tracks circling the shack, heard their low growls in the night, scratching at the door like demons trying to crawl through. Once she caught sight of a large one, gray-backed, amber-eyed, just standing there in the tree lean, watching her. Not afraid, not curious, patient. They knew she was weak. Her rifle, a battered Spencer carbine, sat beside the door with one round left in the chamber. She'd saved it, not for them, but for herself. If it came to it, Josie wasn't the sort to be eaten alive. She tried trapping rabbits the week before. Set the snares where the tree line dipped toward the frozen creek. Caught nothing but frost. Once a pine marten, stringy and mean. She'd eaten it, fur and all, and vomited most of it back up. The air inside the shack smelled like smoke, mold, and desperation. She heard the creak of the wood before she saw anything. Timbers shifting beneath weight. She reached for the rifle, stiff hands fumbling. No one should be out here. No one's sane. Then came hoofbeats. Slow, deliberate. Not the frenzied gallop of a man in flight. The measured rhythm of someone with time and confidence. A shadow passed the front window, tall, broad-shouldered, horseback. Josie's breath caught. The rider dismounted. She heard the crunch of boots in the snow. The cabin door groaned open. He filled the doorway like a piece of bad weather. Long duster coat lined with wolf fur, brimmed hat crusted in ice, revolver at his hip, and eyes the color of smoldering ash. Quiet, calculating eyes. Didn't figure anyone still lived out here, he said, voice deep and dry, like it came from the bottom of a well. Josie said nothing, just raised the rifle. He didn't flinch, just glanced at the barrel. You pull that trigger, I'll still be standing. You won't. She hated how calm he was. Hated that he was right. Her hand was shaking too bad to aim true. He stepped forward. You got a fire going? She didn't answer. He looked around the shack, taking in the broken stove, the scattered straw, the makeshift crutch propped against the wall. Then he looked at her. How long since you ate? Day, she lied. He stared a moment longer, then set his satchel down and pulled out a tin wrapped in cloth. Opened it. Jerky, thick slices. He handed her one. She didn't take it. I ain't charity. Didn't say you were. He set the jerky on the crate beside her. Eat or don't. She waited till he turned his back to start chewing. Salty, smoky, thick. She had to fight not to cry. He moved like a man used to command, stirred the coals in the stove, added kindling from his own supply, then poured coffee grounds into a blackened tin pot. After a while, she found her voice again. "You always dropping on strangers? Only the ones close to dying. You a doctor?" "No." "Then what the hell are you?" He didn't answer right away. Just poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs. Passed one to her. "Name's Gideon Holt." That name stirred something. A cattle baron. She'd heard of him. Rich, powerful, more ghost than man. Some said he killed his own brother in a land dispute. Others swore he once ran with bushwhackers before going clean. She didn't care for stories. But the air shifted when he said his name. He studied her over the rim of his mug. "You Maddox's girl?" "I am Maddox." His brow lifted. "Well, hell. They said you were dead." "Ain't yet. Could have fooled me." She bristled. "You here for land?" "There's nothing left." "I'm not here for land." "Then why?" He leaned forward. "Your fire was out. Smoke was cold. I figured you were gone. Thought I'd bury you decent. You do that for all dying women." He didn't smile, but something flickered in his eyes. Just the ones too stubborn to die proper. They sat in silence for a time. The wind screamed outside again, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Josie gripped the mug tighter. "They'll come closer tonight. They know I'm weak." He looked at the door. "You got boards?" "Used them for the stove." "I'll take first watch." "You ain't staying. You're half dead." "I've been half dead before." "I'll sleep by the door." "Don't need your protection." I didn't offer it. He stood and laid his bedroll by the threshold. She watched him in the dim glow, every muscle taut with suspicion. "Why help me?" Gideon poured himself another coffee. "Lost someone. Winter got her. Try to save her. Too late." She looked away. He added, after a beat, "Maybe I'm not ready to lose again." The confession hung between them like mist. That night, Josie tried to sleep, but the ache in her leg and the weight of everything unsaid kept her eyes open. She watched his silhouette shift near the door, silent and still, one hand resting on his revolver. At some point, she drifted. She woke to the sound of growling. Low, guttural, too close. The fire had gone out. Moonlight spilled through the frost-glazed window. She turned slowly, careful not to jostle the bad leg. The door stood open. Her heart slammed into her ribs. Gideon's bedroll was empty. She reached for the rifle, still only 1 round. Cursed herself for sleeping. Then, through the doorframe, she saw him. Gideon stood outside, shirt open to the cold, facing a ring of wolves. 5 of them, maybe 6, all low to the ground, teeth bared. He didn't move. She watched, breath caught in her throat, as he slowly raised his arm. A flare of silver light. 1 clean shot. 1 wolf dropped. The rest scattered like smoke. He turned back toward the shack, face pale and still as stone. Josie opened the door wider as he stepped in. "You're insane. I prefer lucky. You're freezing." He knelt by the stove. "We'll need more wood." She stared at him in the dark, this man who appeared like an omen and stared down death with an unshaken hand. "Why didn't you wake me?" "You needed sleep more than I did. I had the bullet ready." "I saw." She hesitated. "You could have just kept riding." "I could have." "You gonna come back tomorrow?" He looked at her then, eyes steady. "Yes." She wanted to ask why again, but didn't. She wasn't sure she could take the answer. Instead, she said, "Bring salt. And oats if you've got him." He nodded once, then closed the door behind him with care. The wind roared again, but inside, the silence was different. Not empty, just waiting. Josie Maddox leaned back against the wall, the jerky still heavy in her belly, the pain in her leg throbbing a little less than before. Her hands no longer shook. Not as much. Somewhere in the dark, the wolves waited. But now so did she. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel quite so alone. The days bled into one another like melted snow, soaking into pine wood, slow, bitter, and hard to notice until the cold settled in your bones. Each morning, Gideon Holt returned, sometimes with salt, sometimes with beans or a rough-cut bundle of pine he'd hauled from down timber near the pass. One morning, he brought sugar in a folded cloth, said nothing about it, just left it on the crate by her side, as if he hadn't just handed her a piece of memory. Josie hadn't tasted sugar in 4 months. She didn't thank him. Not with words. Instead, She shared her coffee. They didn't talk much, not in the way folks do when they're trying to impress or entertain. There was no room for small talk between two people who had seen too much winter, one outside, the other within. But silences stretched easier now, softer, less like tension, more like space to breathe. By the fifth day, she let him fix the splint on her leg without protest. He worked with quiet efficiency, his hands calloused but gentle. She gritted her teeth through the worst of it, only once hissing when he adjusted the angle. "You ain't a doctor," she muttered. "No," he agreed, "but I've broken enough of my own bones to know what not to do." She didn't ask how he came by that knowledge. He didn't offer. That night, they split the last of the cornbread he'd bartered from his settler's wife 2 valleys over. Said the woman pitted him, wandering around in a storm asking after a one-legged cowgirl nobody believed was still alive. Josie smirked at that. "You make a habit of chasing ghosts." "I bury him," he said. She didn't smile back. The next morning brought no sun, just wind and ice that lashed against the boards like something angry. Josie sat bundled near the stove, stirring the pot of beans with the handle of a broken ladle. Her leg ached, but the fever had gone. That mattered more. Gideon was sharpening a blade by the window, pausing now and then to listen. She watched him out of the corner of her eye. He was too still for a man and used to trouble. "What is it?" she asked. He didn't look at her. "Tracks. Wolves?" "No." She waited. "Men." Josie set the ladle down. "They near. Close enough to keep quiet." She reached for her rifle automatically. One round still sat in the chamber, her last mercy. Gideon noticed. "Not for you," she said coldly. "If they're coming, I won't go easy." He nodded once. "Good." The nod came a few minutes later. 2 short raps, then a pause. Gideon motioned for her to stay low. He opened the door only halfway, hand on his revolver. 3 men stood outside, faces half buried in scarves. Snow clung to their boots and beards. They looked like cowhands, but not the honest kind. More like the men who rode fences too close to other people's land. The kind who smelled a weakened scent and came sniffing. "Morning," the tallest one said, stepping forward. "Name's Silas Keene. My boys and I are looking for shelter." Gideon didn't blink. "Ain't none here." Silas smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Looks like there's a roof, fire, and something warm in the pot. That's shelter enough for 3 drifters, wouldn't you say?" "You're not welcome." "Now, that's unfriendly." Josie limped forward, her crutch thumping hard on the floor. "We ain't a charity house." "You got legs. Keep moving." Silas looked at her, eyebrows lifting. "Well, damn. I'll be." Maddox herself. "Heard you were dead." "You ain't the first." "Not dead yet, I see. Just broken." Gideon's revolver was out before Silas finished the word. "That's far enough." The men behind Silas shifted. Josie saw it all, how their eyes moved, the way their hands hovered near their belts. They weren't here by accident. They'd tracked Gideon. Or maybe her. "I don't recall envying you boys," Gideon said. Silas smiled wider. "No, but I heard you had something of value up here. Maddox land. Maddox gold. Maddox pride." He turned his head toward Josie. "That right, darling? You still sitting on that little vein your daddy was so proud of?" "There's nothing left," she said. "You be wasting your time digging for ghosts." Silas's eyes glittered. "Now that's a shame." The wind kicked up behind them. Cold slid into the room like a knife. Gideon stepped forward just enough to block the door. "Time to go." Silas raised both hands in mock surrender. "All right, we'll be on our way." They turned slowly, trudging back into the snow. But Josie watched them disappear with a pit forming in her gut. "They'll come back," she said. Gideon nodded. That night, they barricaded the windows and slept in shifts. Josie clutched her rifle beneath the quilt, not for the wolves this time, but for men with eyes like hunger. She couldn't sleep. Her leg was on fire, nerves alive with dread. She kept seeing Silas's grin, the way he'd looked at her like she was meat left too long on the bone. "Who are they?" she asked. Gideon didn't open his eyes. "Thieves. Claim jumpers." "You knew them?" "I know the type." She stared at the ceiling. "He said he heard I'd gold." "There's rumors. Always were. They're lies. Don't matter. Men like that don't need truth. Just the scent of blood." She was quiet for a long time. They want the land. They want what they think it hides. I got nothing. You got me. The silence after that wasn't uncomfortable. It wrapped around her, warm as a second quilt. Morning broke pale and mean. Josie didn't wait for coffee. She crawled to the crate and began sorting the shells Gideon had left in his bag. He had 4. That wasn't enough. He returned at noon, soaked and silent, blood on his coat. Yours? She asked. No. He dropped a pouch on the table. More bullets. She didn't ask how. That night, she couldn't sleep again. Not because of fear, but because she'd started a hope. And hope was a dangerous thing. It made you want to fight harder. Made you believe there was something left worth saving. The next attack came under moonlight. The first sound was the window glass shattering. Josie screamed as a figure lunged through, heavy boots thudding against the floor. She fired once, missed. Gideon tackled the intruder, both men crashing through the chairs near the stove. A second man came through the door, Silas. Josie grabbed her crutch, swung it wide, caught him in the jaw. He reeled, cursing. She tried to crawl for Gideon's rifle, but was dragged backward by her bad leg. She screamed in pain, clawing for the crate. Silas straddled her, breath reeking of tobacco and blood. Always wanted to tame a wild thing, he sneered. A gunshot cracked. Silas froze. Blood bloomed on his chest. He slumped forward, heavy and limp. Gideon stood behind him, revolver in hand, face carved from stone. The man by the stove groaned. Gideon didn't hesitate. Another shot. Silence. Josie lay there panting, body shaking, blood smeared on her shirt. Silas's, not hers. Gideon dropped to his knees beside her. Are you hurt? She nodded numbly. Not bad. He helped her up slowly, eyes scanning the room. The stove was cracked, smoke curling where it shouldn't. The floor was red and sticky. They knew you'd come back, she whispered. I figured they would. You didn't tell me. You would have faced them alone. She stared at him. You used yourself as bait. He didn't deny it. They would have killed you. He looked at her then, really looked. I've been dead a long time, Josie. But you, there's still fire in you. Her eyes filled. You should have let them take the land. It's not the land I care about. She swallowed hard. Then what? You. The word hung in the air like a match strike. Huh. Dangerous. He reached out then, slow and sure, brushing a smear of blood from her cheek. She didn't pull away. Outside, the wind had stilled. Snow fell softer now, as if even the storm was catching its breath. They sat there in the wreckage, side by side, bodies bruised, hearts raw. I don't know what happens next, she murmured. He glanced at her leg, her trembling hands, then out the shattered window. We get through the winter. Her laugh was small, bitter and real. You make it sound simple. It never is. But you'll stay. His voice was quiet. As long as it takes. Josie looked at the fire, what little remained of it, and then at the door the wolves had come through. Wolves with boots and names and teeth. She reached for his hand. It was warm. For the first time since the snow began, so was she. The days after the blood dried were quieter, but never peaceful. Gideon buried the bodies before dawn, dragging them through the snow with a quiet fury Josie didn't question. She watched from the porch, wrapped in the coat he'd left her. Her crutch leaned beside her like a tired sentinel. Her rifle lay across her lap, loaded now. Every time the wind shifted, she half expected more of Silas's kind to ride up over the ridge. But none came. Not yet. The cabin smelled like death. No matter how much sage she burned or windows she opened, it clung to the rafters like guilt. Gideon said little that day. He patched the stove, reset the broken table leg, cleaned the floor with boiling water and old rags. His movements were methodical, like a man keeping his hands busy to silence the noise in his head. Josie understood. She'd done the same for years, just with horses, not corpses. By nightfall, she couldn't stand the quiet. You think they'll come looking for them? Gideon didn't turn from the fire. Maybe. They rode together long enough to owe each other a bullet if one fell. She nodded slowly. Then they'll come. He finally looked at her. Yes. The silence stretched, crackled, broke. You still think this place is worth dying for? She asked. His eyes held her. I think you are. She looked away. He stepped toward her, boots heavy on the wood. You don't have to fight him alone anymore. She felt something shift in her chest, something old and rusted creaking open. I ain't afraid, she whispered. I know. That's what scares me. She laughed softly, bitter and warm all at once. You got a way of saying things that make me feel both strong and foolish. He knelt beside her chair. You ever wonder why I came? I figured I was just a pity case. No. She met his gaze. I came because I heard what happened at Silver Hollow, he said. How you stood alone after they took your brother's land. How they burned the barn, and you stayed, shooting into the dark until the fire caught the roof. Her throat tightened. That was a long time ago. Long enough for liars to forget. Not for me. Why does it matter to you? Because I know what it's like. To be the last one standing when you were never meant to stand alone. Josie swallowed hard. Let me stand with you. She didn't answer. Not then. Instead, she let him build the fire higher. Let him sit beside her in the glow. Their silence not cold this time, but full of something neither dared name. The next day brought trouble. Not with rifles or fists, but with smoke. A column of it, rising from the east ridge. Gideon spotted it first. He went still, watching the plume twist skyward like a warning. That ain't a campfire, he said. Josie squinted. They burnin' something, or someone. He saddled the mare without another word. Josie started to rise. I'm coming too. You can't ride yet. Then I'll walk. You'll fall. I've fallen before. Gideon clenched his jaw. I won't leave you alone. You won't. You'll be coming back. She loaded her rifle. Or I'll be coming for you. He didn't smile, but he nodded. By dusk, he hadn't returned. The ridge stayed quiet, the smoke long gone. But Josie felt in her gut. Something had shifted. Something had snapped. She waited until the stars came out. Then she strapped her brace tighter, shoved 2 bullets in her coat, and started hobbling toward the trees. Every step was agony. Every breath stole more from her lungs. But she kept going. She moved like an animal in the dark, silent, wounded, and watchful. She reached the ridge after midnight. What she found there made her stop cold. The clearing below was lit with torchlight, flickering halos circling a cabin twice the size of hers. Men gathered in groups, their voices low, angry, hungry. She spotted Gideon tied to a post, bloodied and half-conscious, one eye swollen shut. Josie didn't hesitate. She crawled down the hill, hugging the tree line, dragging herself inch by inch toward the back of the cabin. Her legs screamed. Her spine ached. But she moved forward, because Gideon had come for her, because no one else ever had. She found an axe behind the cabin, rusted dull but solid. She waited until 2 men staggered away from the fire, laughing over something one of them said about cripples and cowards. She rose like a shadow, drove the axe into the first man's back. The second never had time to scream. She took his knife. Then she moved again. 1 torch. 2. The fire crackled behind her as she neared the post. Gideon's head rolled weakly toward her. Thought I told you, he mumbled to stay. She cut the ropes fast. You look like hell. He coughed a wet laugh. You look better than I feel. They didn't get far. A voice rang out behind them. Well, hell, ain't this a surprise? Silas's brother. Josie remembered his name now. Boone. Bigger. Meaner. Eyes like broken glass. He leveled his rifle at them. 3 more men flanked him. Thought I smelled Maddox blood. Josie stepped in front of Gideon. Boone grinned. Ain't you sweet? She raised the rifle. You want a Maddox? Come take me. Boone didn't flinch. I reckon I'll take you both. Then came the howl. Low. Long, cutting through the night like a blade. Everyone froze. A second howl answered. Closer. The men turned, rifles lifting, and out of the trees came the real wolves. Not 2. Not 3. A whole damn pack. Starved. Desperate. Boone fired first. Missed. Chaos erupted. Men screamed. Josie dragged Gideon toward the tree-line, boots slipping in blood and mud. A wolf lunged past her, jaws snapping on someone else's arm. Gunshots roared. Another man went down. Then another. She didn't look back. She didn't stop. Not until they reached the ridge again. Both of them collapsed in the snow, gasping, bleeding alive. Did we make it? Gideon asked. Josie laughed, breathless. For now. He looked at her. You saved me. She looked back. You saved me first. He touched her cheek, his fingers trembling. Don't leave me. I won't. They sat there in the dark, the fires dying below, the wolves finishing what the snow had started. And above them, the stars kept watch. For the first time in years, Josie Maddox felt something deep in her chest. Not pain, not rage, but fire. The kind that didn't burn you alive, but lit the path forward.